So there are so many books on Stephen Sondheim. He is the quintessential musical theater composer. It's if you've been in this business 15 minutes, you already know two Stephen Sondheim songs. So to say there's a book on Stephen Sondheim, okay, but you picked a piece of him that, frankly, I had never even knew he was a puzzle guy. So when I saw the blurb and everything, I was like, really? How, how did you come across this? How did this become something that you wanted to do?
Jay, I'm expecting for my readers, they will be just as surprised when they read the title as I was when I heard Stephen Sondheim, rather read that Stephen Sondheim had said to James Lapine early in their collaboration on Sunday in the Park with George that he was going to leave musical theater to go into video game design. That's the early 1980s. We're talking the days of Atari and television and ColecoVision. The idea that Stephen Sondheim was thinking about not just leaving musical theater, which would be tragic enough, but that where he was going to go was video game design just came completely out of left field. I was reading the new oral history that came out a few years ago. You might have seen it. It's called oh, what's it called? I'm blanking on it. It's the history of Sunday in the Park with George, and it is an amazing book. It's James Lapine interviewing everyone who was involved and helping you understand the full process of what it was like. And at the beginning of the creation of that show, Sondheim had just come off of the critical disaster that was Merrily We Roll Along, and he was feeling savaged by the critics, and he wanted to go into a supportive community. And so video game design was described as that supportive community. So for me, only knowing Stephen Sondheim from his music, from seeing the movies based on his shows, from seeing the shows on Broadway and revivals, I didn't know where this was coming from. And in the rest of this phenomenal book on Sunday in the Park with George, sometimes interesting games and puzzles was never mentioned again. So for someone like me who is a game designer, has worked in educational game design for 2.5 decades, I founded Games for Change. I worked at institutions like the American Museum of Natural History, where we worked with young people and developed games that would then be sold in the exhibit shop. I understood games, but I didn't understand how Sondheim fit into that piece. As soon as I started doing some very basic Google searches, I was coming across things that I found shocking and surprising that I hadn't known earlier. I didn't know that he was the founding puzzle editor of New York Magazine when it was founded in 1968. And for almost a year and a half, he created a weekly crossword. And not just any crossword, but a cryptic crossword. Had you heard of cryptic crosswords before? Or is that new for you?
Of course not. Oh my
So
goodness.
cryptics are the standard style of crosswords in England, but they are so complex and so much more challenging to get into that it was very rare for an American at that time to even have heard of them, let alone be able to do them. Sondheim was now creating one every single week for an American audience, which meant not only creating them, but teaching American audiences, the readers of New York Magazine, how you even began to think about these things. And that's just one piece. I learned about The Last of Sheila, his only Hollywood movie that he wrote, co-developed with Anthony Perkins and directed by Herbert Ross, in which the entire half of the movie are treasure hunts, games, and all of these activities that are based on the things Stephen Sondheim was actually doing with his friends, designing treasure hunts, designing these really challenging parlor games. And I kept coming across one thing after another, but it was usually just little bits. It was little tips of the iceberg. It was, I mentioned in an interview where the person wanted to talk with Stephen Sondheim about his music, but would start by saying something like, I hear you love puzzles, and I hear you love anagrams, or I hear you love treasure hunts. What does it have to do with, and then fill in the blank, whatever show he'd just come out with. And even if Sondheim wanted to talk about the games and puzzles, that's not where those conversations went. So I realized if I had to understand what was underneath Sondheim fantasizing about going into video game design, I had to go beyond what was available in the public. I had to go beyond printed interviews, biographies, uh, um, descriptions of people who had been friends with him and collaborators with him, who were writing in their memoirs about their experiences with Stephen Sondheim. And I had to go straight to people and say, hi, I don't want to talk to you about Stephen Sondheim, the lyricist. I don't want to talk to you about Stephen Sondheim, the composer. I want to talk to him. I want to talk to you about Stephen Sondheim, your friend, who you played with. What was it like 60 years ago going to one of his parties? What was it like asking him to develop a treasure hunt for your wife's birthday party? What was it like to be the party planner at an event with hundreds of people where all of City Central was going to be taken over for an hour to do this incredibly elaborate treasure hunt? And so, speaking with people like this, over 100 people, the stories they told me were not only remarkable, if they were about anybody, but the fact that people remembered at such level of detail, it was as if they were still there. And again, we're going back to the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. And Sondheim not only was involved with puzzles and games early in his life, he never stopped. At the year anniversary of his passing, there was a special invitation only event in the theater named for him on Broadway. And it wasn't people singing his songs. It wasn't people talking about what it was like to be in his performances. They were just his friends and collaborators at the mic, sharing stories about what made Stephen Sondheim special to them. And a significant number of them talked about how playful he was. They talked about going to escape rooms, doing anagrams, playing cutthroat anagrams, which is a type of board games with Scrabble pieces. And on they went at different phases of Stephen Sondheim's life, going to escape rooms just 10 years earlier or playing, cutthroat anagrams back in the 1960s. This was something that was a part of who he was and a part of his life, both for his friends and his collaborators, and occasionally with places like New York Magazine and The Last of Sheila, something we in the public got to get a taste of.
Do you think we get a taste of it anyway? His lyrics, for instance, and even his music, sometimes it almost seems like a puzzle piece. It's funny you're talking about Sunday in the Park with George, when they're talking about the pixelations of as they're painting it.
Boo boo red red, boo boo red, boo boo red.
Exactly. Finishing a hat, finishing a hat. Everything seems like it's coming together in so many other pieces. And ironically, we hear about this that he wants to do it for Merrily Roll Along, which is a great big puzzle right there because it's such a famous musical, yet it had such a tumultuous history and it goes backwards. Do you think we've seen his puzzle working just from his lyrics?
Once people understand that Stephen Sondheim loved not just playing games and puzzles, but designing them, it then makes sense in the way you described. Like, of course, you see that throughout his work. You see that he's creating puzzles for himself in deciding that I'm going to do an entire show that's narratively structured backwards, where the music actually functions in the opposite direction, as if it was written in the other order and it was then played so that the reprises come before the song is actually introduced. You go, oh, yeah, of course, of course. But at the same time, the depth of the challenges he created for himself, I think, are both remarkable and surprising. I could have written an entire book that was an analysis of his shows from a ludological perspective. Ludology is the study of play. So I'm looking at Sondheim's life from the study of play, looking at how he used plays and games to connect with other people and design experiences for them as a way to understand his mind and how he worked. So I could have written an entire book about looking at his shows from that perspective. There are books about postmodern perspective on his shows. So every show is analyzed from a postmodern perspective. Or Richard Shook's recent book that's about looking at his shows and seeing what you can learn about them as life lessons. Someone I'm sure is going to write a book about how to understand his shows from a game and puzzle perspective. And I hope I help them out. My appendices, I did an analysis of all of Sondheim's shows to look at three things. When are games and puzzles mentioned? Because they are actually playing a game in his last musical that was posthumous. Here We Are. They talk about charades, for example, and other games are played in other shows. There's a game called Taking Hostages, and Merrily We Roll Along. But then what I'm more interested in is how the structures of the shows are based around puzzles and games. So you mentioned Sunday in the Park with George J. That first act is the construction of the painting that we're seeing created throughout the first act. And just like a jigsaw puzzle that's slowly coming together, and we know what that final image is, there's that moment of clarity that we experience as an audience when we see all of the props, all of the actors, all of the set, all come together in that final moment when we know it's coming. And still, for me, I'm brought to tears every time. And then finally, I look at the process of creating the shows and where we can see puzzles and games involved. So yes, that's in the book, but as I mentioned, it's an appendices because really it's there to help others get started. What I'm more interested in is looking at the puzzles and games that Stephen Sondheim created and what we can learn about the design values embedded within those games and values, and more importantly, how they help us understand who is Stephen Sondheim? How did that brilliant mind work? And what can we learn about ourselves in the process?
It's so funny when we're talking about the Sunday in the Park with George and so many others, and it's blowing my mind because I'm ushering back to all of his other shows, and there are so many moments where you might think it's a game. In Sweeney Todd, Little Priest, they're actually topping each other, so it's Potter, hotter, sweeter. Da, da, da. So you see games in there. Even the set for Sweeney Todd is a great big Rubik's cube.
Hmm.
When you get right down to it, it turns, and now suddenly it's the bake shop. It turns, it's the barber shop. So there's always some level of game. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, we see in that show in Little Priest the two characters competing to see if they can stump the other one and coming up with a rhyme. And at first, we're watching two people competing, almost like we're in a reality show. And then we realize they together are Stephen Sondheim challenging us to see, can we follow along, and will we be able to see where he's going to get his characters tripped up? Can he top himself? And we're rooting him on every single time. And we see something similar as well. For example, in Pacific Overtures, where again we have two characters who are trying to top each other off. Not top each other off. They're trying to beat the other, but in a collaborative way, where they're doing poems, and each one is doing a certain type of a style of a Japanese poem, and each one is doing one after the other. It's not as it doesn't have the same impact as it does, luckily, in Sweeney Todd. But the experience for the audience is both. We're watching characters playfully engaging with each other through what? Of wordplay, of course.
It's interesting, but in Gypsy, we go way back on this in terms of Sondheim. There's the apocryphal story that Julie Stein was exhausted, and he said, "I can't write a final song for Ethel Merman. I'm just exhausted. Steve, you go write it." And he wrote Rose's Turn. And Rose's Turn really is compilations of every piece of the musical itself. She's actually singing little lines from various other songs in there. So it's like he's completing the puzzle of that musical as well with that finale of a number. When you
Oh, I
look at it,
love the analysis. It's like he took the entire script, throw it up in the air, all the pieces came down, and he randomly took a bunch of jigsaw puzzles to figure out how can they fit together, or more importantly, resonate together, because they don't fit together. There's a dissonance there that's intentional. She's having a breakdown, and it's the dissonance between them, and yet the association we have from having heard them earlier that creates this remarkable effect for the audience.
that's great. Wow. Uh, so now I ask you, you're a game designer. What did you learn about yourself? A fellow interviewer always has the question, what have you learned about yourself in the
Mm.
process? What you as a game designer, now we're looking at Sondheim, and you delved beyond most what people would know about him. How did it change you as a game person? How did it change you?
Looking at Sondheim's work helped me to better understand both the values in my designs, reinforcing what I thought I was doing well, and things I think I could be doing better. When I look overall at his designs, three things came to mind. One is his level of generosity. He's not trying to trip you up, whether it's a puzzle or a game. Even though he's challenging you to be the best you can be, he wants to help you to get there. And he's going to create spaces to allow you to do that. And so being able to think about your end users in that way, with that level of heart, so people feel like that someone has their back, someone can see them, is a beautiful idea. The second one is just playfulness. His stuff was so playful. And one of the examples I like to use is there was a treasure hunt he did for the cast in 1973 of Little Night Music. They were moving from one theater to another, and so they were going to have a celebratory event before they moved, and get everyone together and say, okay, everyone count off by five, and that's going to be your group. Instead, everyone received a puzzle piece, and the puzzle piece came in their mailbox, and they didn't even know what it was for. So there's this kind of mystery and surprise, like, what is this? And as people started walking around the room, finding out who else had pieces that matched theirs, they saw that what was coming together were promo pictures from the production. So it was photos of themselves in their very show. And once people found each other, then the treasure hunt could start. But what would otherwise have been just kind of a procedural practice of organizing people into a group became a playful, mysterious entry point to let people transition from whatever they were doing before they came to the party to being in that magic circle of gameplay. And so being able to think about being playful in every way you can is something I try and challenge myself to now based on his work. And the final one was mentorship. Like I mentioned earlier, he wasn't just creating a challenge that you'd think that He was smart. He wanted to create a challenge so you would realize how smart you were. That meant he wasn't going to dumb things down, folding to help you get there. Again, like I said, that he's got your back. So those three things are so important for me. And I think about that now with all of my designs, whether it's something I'm doing in game design or even designing my museum, the Brooklyn Seltzer Museum, or any other creative projects that I'm doing. And I love bringing that to mind when I'm thinking about my podcast. It's a podcast series connected to the book. I did, as I mentioned, over 100 interviews with people for the book. And from that, I now have 60 hours of original interviews. And those interviews were explicitly for the book. Not everyone needed to give me permission to use them, but enough of them did that I have 30 hours of original interviews. So I'm chopping them up into thematic chunks, and then I'm bringing in people who were not part of the conversation. People who were experts on Stephen Sondheim. People who were experts on rooms, on jigsaw puzzles. People who were both. We're listening to, and I think about it. You could in the it's for the. I just got kicked out. Let me know where we left, and I'll start from the beginning of that paragraph.
You got put back in. It was just a quick reboot.
But did you get all I was saying, or should I go back a paragraph?
Got most of that there. I know you're pressed for time, so I wanted to give a big shout out to the book itself. And it's
Yeah, okay.
I thought it's just at the Draw Bookstore. Please tell us about the Draw Bookshop and tell us about the, oh my God, the dozens and dozens of places that you're going to be speaking regarding this book.
I've been an educator for decades. So when I write a new book, that's not the end of the project for me. That's in some ways the beginning. That's when not only does the book get released, literally, I'm releasing it, it's now yours, but now I want to go out into the world and I want to be part of how you experience it. I'm offering workshops on game design. I'm offering workshops on how to throw your own Sondheim game night, how to design your own parlor games, all in Stephen Sondheim styles. I'm doing talks that are very much like interactive presentations where I'm exploring all sorts of concepts. At the Drama Bookshop, I'm going to talk about, do we really need another book around Stephen Sondheim? When I launched the book at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts, I was focusing on the importance of the research institutions that without which I couldn't have written the book. And in other places, I'm picking different topics, the history of his murder game, for example, or understanding what we can learn about Stephen Sondheim and his shows and the designs through the games themselves. So I'm going to try and do something different or a variation of something I've done everywhere I go, and specifically adapting it for the locations and the audiences themselves. So at the end of the workshop, for example, at the New York Public Library, we had 2 different treasure hunts designed for that space by the participants of the workshop. So they're collaborative, they're inspiring, and for many people, I think they'll be surprising.
So there we have
Sorry,
it.
Jay.
Each and every workshop is different. Each and every lecture is different. So you're creating a huge Stephen Sondheim puzzle. So you don't have to just see one lecture. You could follow you all over the place and learn something from each and every time.
I'm giving everyone an invitation. Come play with me.
All right. Tell us about the Draw Bookshop, when and where and everything, so that people can come and see you there and start playing with you.
Sure. Well, the Drama Bookshop is going to be in October. It is going to be on October 9th. And as I said, it's called Do We Really Need Another Book on Sondheim? And I'm so excited because I'm going to be doing it with Michael Mitnick. If you don't know Michael Mitnick, he's an artist who's remarkable. And I learned about him because he's the world's greatest collector of Sondheimia. If there's anything out in the world that someone can collect from Stephen Sondheim, if he doesn't have it, he knows who does. So he was a remarkable resource for me throughout the entire project and tremendous moral support. So I'm thrilled to get to be doing this event at the Drama Bookshop with Michael Mitnick, who himself has a fantastic new children's book coming out about Broadway. So I'm hoping he'll mention that as well.
Wow. So we have a master gamer, we have a master game designer, you writing about a master puzzle maker, Stephen Sondheim, and you're collaborating with a master collector for this. Okay, this is a worthy event. October 9, and I think it starts at 7:30. Your book is available there. The Drama Bookshop is in the middle of Manhattan. I think it's across the street from the New York Times, actually. And you can go online to dramabookshop.com to find out all information regarding that. Barry, I look forward to seeing you at that event. I wish I could talk to you longer about this because fascinating topic, but I know you're already going off to another lecture somewhere to talk all about Mr. Sondheim and
For sure. But if you want to connect with me or anyone who's listening, just go to the Instagram account, Matching Minds with Sondheim, connect with me there, or go to the same phrase on Facebook.
Matching Minds with Sondheim. There it is. Thank you, Barry. All the best. Can't wait to see you in October.
Thank you, Jay.
Ciao.